So it's lovely to see you all. Thank you all so much for joining us. And the plan is that we will go around and we will meet everybody just very briefly, and you can say a little bit about how things are being affected in your country. But one of the things we're trying to look at is the risks for singers, singing teachers and choirs, and how different countries might be approaching the challenges of COVID. And we want to share good practice. And I will give Leva an opportunity later on, very briefly, to just say what we're trying to do on the EVTA website so that you can access information. But it's lovely to see you all. I'm Susan, I'm president of EVTA. And I have to thank Filipa because she said, why don't we have a Zoom meeting? And she expressed something that was in my heart, but I hadn't got round to it. So I have to thank Filipa and her team. So Filipa, do you want to just say your reasoning behind us getting together?
Yes, thank you very much to everybody who is gathering with us today. I've prepared a little presentation. Susan, I think this is the time to present it, but please do tell me if it's not. Um, and in this presentation, I am going to show you the reason why we ApVoz, which is the Portuguese Association of Teachers and Professional Voice Users, teachers of singing and professional voice users, were concerned about the COVID-19 and the risks and the singing teaching and etc. Does everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I would ask you to mute your microphones if you don't mind, so that the presentation can go without any background noise. And then when you want to ask questions, you can unmute yourself. Is this okay? Yeah? Okay. So we were very concerned about the risks of being singing, especially in choirs with the COVID, when the the working activity of choirs and singing teachers started to started after being confined at home with the quarantine period that the Portuguese government imposed to everybody. And this concern was because we started to read about the transmission pathways of the SARS-CoV-2, and there is this wonderful upgrade document made by Claudia Spahn and Bernhard Richter from Germany that explained to musicians and to also including singers the risks of contamination. And in this document, you could see that the COVID-19, the disease, can be spread through droplets. But actually, the current information we have is that actually the aerosols might be even the most common transmission pathway that exists, and therefore singing is an activity of risk by itself, but also through contact and through contacting contaminated surfaces, and then having the hands contaminated and touching our faces, noses, or ear or eyes. So these pathways made us go through the Portuguese Health Service recommendations for reducing the risk of contamination, and we saw that there was general recommendations for musicians, which included in Portugal to maintain a physical distance of 2 meters, except for cinemas, concert halls, and open spaces. Now this is under revision because, as I said previously, the risk of contamination through aerosols is being taken seriously right now, and therefore these cinemas and might be closed again. I don't know. We will see what happens. Then they said that it's compulsory to use masks in closed spaces, except when you are a performer and you are on stage. And it was also compulsory to ventilate closed spaces without air recirculation. Then looking to specific recommendations, we found that they say that concert halls, people should keep the first 2 rows empty or maintain a 2 meters distance between the stage and the first row of audience. The open spaces should be readapted to guarantee physical distance of 2 meters between people. The orchestra should not play in the pit. And also the wind instrumentalists and singers should keep a distance of 2 meters and the remaining instrumentalists about 1.5 meters. They also recommend to avoid breaks during the performances to avoid mingle and scattering of audience members, and they recommend to not share any objects such as stands and scores and things like that, and in the toilets to guarantee 2 meter distance between users. So we found that these recommendations were a bit not specific to singers and to choir singing. So we got into this and interested in understanding why we should have more suggestions to keep the risk of contamination down. And we, based on the Freiburg Institute of Musicians, Medicine and the Hochschule für Musik document on risk assessment, spread this information on our website, that basically we should take care on 3 big domains. We should do an entrance screen, we should be very careful with the choice of location of the singing lesson or of the rehearsal or of the concert, and also to be care about the ventilation in these spaces, and also to have individual protective measures. So as to what concerns the entrance screening, we should do a risk assessment of the persons that come to the singing lesson or the rehearsal or the concert, ask about their symptoms, take a temperature check, and when possible, if it's to start teaching at the conservatoire, get a prior test for COVID-19. Then as to what concerns the choice of location and ventilation, always go for open spaces. When open spaces is not a possibility, then choose a big space with the possibilities of ventilation of the space. Clean the spaces and all surfaces before and after its use, and have always at accessible for everybody alcohol disinfection solutions. As to what concerns individual protective measures, clean the hands before going into a lesson or a rehearsal or a concert hall, not share the objects, as I said, including the scores, the music stands, the microphones, maintain a physical distance of 4 meters square, and use protective masks at all time, except when physical distance and constant ventilation are possible. And as I said before, why is this important to wear these masks? Well, there is a recent study that shows that the virus also spreads through aerosols. Here is an image of a study done by the University Medical School of Vienna. And you see the aerosol transmission in this figure here without protection, and you can see the scatter of the aerosols through in front and also in the sides and above the face of the singer. Then with the mask you see that the scattering of the aerosols is really reduced, but it still happens through the sides and through the upper part of the face of the singer. And with the face shield the protection is less than the mask, because you have this scattering of aerosols through down and upper part of the faces and also the sides. So our recommendations in the country were to always choose, when it's not possible, always choose, go for distance learning. And thank God we have all these technical options, Skype, as Jitsi, as Microsoft Teams, or Zoom, or even Google Meet. and we can do good singing lessons over distance learning. I think would be a good idea to debate one of these days how what would be the best conditions we can get in terms of microphones and platforms that we could use for teaching distance learning, because this is also the future. But when this distance learning is not possible, then the teacher should maintain a physical distance of 4 meters squares from the student and from the pianist when he is present in the lesson. The teacher and the pianist should wear a mask and a face shield. We should always go for a wide space for lesson, for example, an auditorium. We should plan the classes so that we give a good 50 minutes break between students, and in that break we should proceed with the cleaning and the ventilation of the space, including the surfaces. And also the pianist should clean the piano with a cloth imbibed in an alcohol-based solution so that we guarantee if there is another pianist coming, the instrument is cleaned. In the choir rehearsals, we recommended that the rehearsals should be planned so that they are short and have a break every 50 minutes. Reduce the number of choir singers per rehearsal as possible. Plan shorter rehearsals as possible. Use a line formation between choir members, and I here appreciate the permission that the Flemish radio choir gave me to show these images, and Liv was the person who sent these images to me, of good practices of choir. So you can see how they rehearse in a very open place with the line formation. They even have a shield in between the singers. So it is possible to rehearse, but we really need to invest in these protective measures. So this is what I wanted to share with you. And I pass my word now to Susan.
Thank you, Filipa. That has sort of got us going. So now what I'm going to do is ask on my screen what I can see, and ask everybody just to introduce themselves and say hello, and just maybe say what the situation in their country. So the next person to me I've got is Marilyn. So if we can go to Marilyn, except you have to unmute.
Yes.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Marilyn Schmieger, president of BDG. This is the German Voice Teachers Association, Bundesverband Deutsche Gesangspädagogen. We are very fortunate in Germany, I think, to have very reasonable politicians who are, I think, have done a wonderful job of getting the pandemic as much under control as we can hope for. The good and the bad of this is that Germany is a federal system. That means there is quite a lot of autonomy within the 16 federal states. This is for good and bad. At the beginning, everybody said, well, we should have one set of rules for everybody. And fortunately, this didn't work, so that now we have very specific instructions for the different regions of Germany. And this is, I think, a very good idea. For example, in the state of Mecklenburg-Pommern, Oder, or Saxony, there are very few infections at the moment. As opposed to Bavaria has gotten much better, and also North Rhine-Westphalia, the infections have been reduced. But we see that it is a good idea when an outbreak comes to locate it, confine it, and isolate the hotspot instead of making the entire country go into isolation. It is very important, of course, to keep an active look on what is going on. And this is being done. I think it's a very good idea. One thing coming up as sort of an experiment will be the Salzburger Festspiele, to see what happens when an actual festival does take place. And then to see what happens when everybody gets back from vacation at the end of the summer, and to see what happens in the schools. Filipa did a wonderful presentation on all the things that we can do to reduce risk. And that's all that is really possible, is to reduce the risk find out what our individual risk is, and then stick to our guns, and not try not to be influenced by people who say, oh, it's not important. For me, was very revealing to see the webinar from the NATS Congress at the just before the beginning of the conference, a very valuable presentation which can be viewed there. It's an hour and a half, and it is very, very informative. So I would recommend watching that if you have not already.
Thank you. And Eleanor Forbes is also from Germany. So Eleanor, if you unmute and give yourself a... There you are. Unmute.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah.
You can hear me now. Good. Yes, I was on the board of the BDG for 4 years. I'm now standing for election for the EVTA board. I work at university level and also have a private studio. And I want to give a little more local and personal view on this. Marilyn talked about the different restrictions in the different states, and a lot of the politicians are listening to scientists. They're not necessarily listening to the voice scientists. And what has happened in Berlin now is that since the end of last month, there was one sentence in the new ordinance that said singing together in closed spaces is forbidden. They did not differentiate between they didn't define what is a closed space, and they didn't define what is singing together. So there have been lots of questions like, my daughter has a birthday party soon. Are we allowed to sing happy birthday together for her? Or choirs are not allowed to rehearse or perform indoors. They have to be outdoors, if at all. I sing in a choir that does a choral evensong in the Berlin Cathedral once a month. And in June, we sang with an octet in this huge building with no congregation, but live streamed. This month, we rehearsed yesterday in the porch outside the cathedral. And on Saturday, the choral evensong will be streamed into the church. So we're singing outside with the wind. There's a lot of confusion here. The state of Brandenburg, which is right next door, allows choirs to sing indoors, a maximum number of people, I think. So completely differing restrictions in individual states can lead to confusion, certainly. And singing teachers are allowed to do individual lessons, but not group lessons. Workshops, you can only sing one at a time, have lots of ventilation. Communal singing, you'd have to go outdoors. The other thing is, in my private studio, it's a large space. I can use the ventilation. We have lots of windows. We can keep huge distance. We can screen the entrance, no problem. But the universities here, there are two higher education music institutions, and one of them has said, no, it's purely an online semester, everything digital, and the other has now allowed presence one-to-one lessons, but in a large room and with half an hour's ventilation between students. So they're completely different approaches within the same city, within the same state.
Thank you, Eleanor. Now, the next person on my screen is Bo. So, Bo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Filipa, for your contribution. It was very good to have all this information. I'm the president of the Swedish Teacher Society, and I work at the Royal College in Stockholm and at the Academy of Music and Drama in Gothenburg. And as everyone else, we closed for 3 months or something. So I've been sitting in front of the computer, and sometimes I've had like 7 or 8 45 minutes classes, and that is so tiring. The Swedish government has been accused for being a little bit sloppy, but maybe I think we have a tradition more to be recommended things than to be told what to do and not to do. So they have given a lot of recommendations. From the beginning of the autumn, the Royal College will reopen, but it's very much up to me as a teacher if I prefer to go there or if I want to continue with online teaching. So I asked for plexiglasses and bigger rooms and so. And Gothenburg is also very much up to yourself. So we have said that we will start and see what will happen. But they have talked about maybe, for example, we can't, in Gothenburg there are 600 students, and they said we are not allowed to have that many students at the same time in the building. So maybe some students will come one day and the others another day. So, but it's very much up to different schools, and it's very much recommendations.
Thank you, Bo.
Thank you.
I'm sort of zooming along, and I can see Antra, and I know things are different in Antra with Antra. So,
hello, everybody. After I look in last survey about COVID, and I'm happy to say that Latvia is in a top, how to say, safe places. We have in all this period just 1,200 cases at all, and even this cases was about a little bit up to 30. But what about schools and academy was in fact the same. What Filipa suggested, we already kept these solutions all till the mid of May. We just had online lessons, and it was individual how different teachers decided to do it. But since middle of May, there was a problem, of course, for students who graduated this year. So how to assess them, how to give diploma, will this diploma be named Corona diploma or so. And finally, there was a decision that those who have to graduate, they are allowed to have normal lessons in a person. It was at the very beginning, it was very restricted, but then it softened. And in fact, we have normal exams in hall with jury and only without audience. That was a sad thing. But other students and also school pupils who was not graduating, they kept finished this year just in online version. At the Music Academy now, usually our study year starts in 1st of September, but this year it will be also entrance exams will be very late August, and so a little bit later will start next semester. No one knows how it will go, but in fact in public all these laws are softer and softer. Now we are not obliged to use masks in public transport, and also everything, life is absolutely normal except the theaters and music is stopped. But choirs and from the 1st June also amateur choirs are allowed to come together, and they keep a little bit distance, singer from singer, but they practice. That's it's important thing. And also the professional choirs will start, and our opera I think will start in the middle of August. So that's a situation in Riga, in Latvia.
We will all come and move to Riga. Thank you. And Pilar.
Hello, everybody. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm Pilar Lirio from Spain. Well, here the situation is worse. Every day is worse and worse. Maybe we come back to the confinement and the isolation again, maybe in a few days or weeks, or we don't know. The problem here are the private teachers, because our laws are not very friendly for musicians. So you have to be careful to sing too loud, for example. You have to rent an isolated room if you want to have classes because of the noise. it's not easy. I had to close my academy because it was impossible. An isolated room, you know, that is a closed place with no windows, with very, very small places, and it's impossible to maintain the security distance. And the problem is, if you want to have classes online, in the association we have two problems. One of them is the laws. You can't do noise, so you have to have classes with the headphones, and it's not easy to calibrate the voice that you are hearing. And the other problem is the digital gap. It's very serious because a lot of teachers here are aged, not very young, and digital gap here is very, very serious also. So, well, I'm trying to do my best. I open a YouTube channel. I'm planning, I'm recording videos to try to improve the problem, explaining people about cameras, videos, lights, wires, adaptators, everything, so they can reach, the online classes. They don't know even, I don't know, install the Zoom, for example, or things like that. Very basic, but it's the problem here. And the laws. The laws, don't allow you to do noise, any kind of noise.
Thank you, Pilar. We
Okay.
feel for you. We know. Thank you. Everybody is experiencing this slightly differently. Elizabeth, in Italy, your country suffered very badly at the beginning. How are things in Italy now?
Well, I'm Elizabeth Aubrey, and I'm the international representative for AICI, which is the Italian Association. And Italy, I think, is doing well. The lockdown was quite rigid, and I'm sure many of you have read about the differences. We also have differences between regions, very large numbers of contagion in the northern part of Italy, and very little in the south. So there was a lot of discussion about what to do and what measures to take. However, I've seen both. I haven't been to the north, but I have been to the south, and I've noticed that everyone is very responsible. I would say not everyone, but the large majority. Masks, many people wear gloves, plastic, when you go into any store, hand disinfectant. So basically the mentality is to take responsibility for yourself and for those around you. And I think this carries over into the music, the voice teaching community, especially those who teach privately, have a private studio. Many of the modern, what we call moderno, it's pop, jazz, CCM teachers, need to sort of invent their own rules based on what they know from the general information that comes to them. I've done some research about the conservatory system, and I found out that the conservatory system is dependent on the university system. It's under the control of the universities. So what I have read about protocol for COVID, which would apply to the conservatory, is based on a university setting. So that eliminates a lot of the specifically musical situations that need to be addressed. Now, they talk about instrumental lessons, distancing, open spaces, ventilation. That's where it stops. I don't think I saw the word canto once. So this is something that needs to be developed. And I do know that I can't really say who it is at the moment because it's sort of up in the air, but one university has asked a conservatory to do specifically a research project on the aerosol dissemination in the voice lesson, the singing lesson, the choir rehearsal. So hopefully this will move forward. I know that in terms of music, the Arena di Verona is doing, I believe, their first opera in August. I don't know how they're going to manage that, but you know, it's in the planning. So in terms of public spaces, that's sort of a gradual, you know, people are just sort of feeling their way along at the moment. We also, as Antra mentioned, we had in the conservatories exams, and they were held either online or in an open space with no public, with just as Antra said. So I think it's a little slow here, but I feel that the general attitude is very, very responsible. And I think people are pretty used to the measures that they have to take in everyday life. So that will then carry over. And people are very concerned in the music, in the conservatory and the singing world about what they need to do. So that's what
Thank you, Elizabeth. I realized that I need to go to Anna because Anna sent me a message to say that she had to go. So Anna, from Serbia, would you just like to say something about the situation in Serbia?
Yes, thank you very much. And it's wonderful to see everybody again, I have to say. Hello from Belgrade, and you probably, unfortunately, we're in the news nowadays. I see that the foreign news are also transmitting what's happening in Belgrade. And I also wish that we have met a month ago. I could have said that the situation was well and that it's getting better, because at that time in June, before the elections, we had about 200 or even less new cases of COVID-19 and a day, and that was better than before, and they were relaxing the measures, but unfortunately, obviously because of the elections, they relaxed too much, and now we're back, actually not as before, but worse than before. Let's see, as my colleagues have said before, we have pretty much the same ideas and information about the virus, and the organization at the schools is the same. I'm teaching at the music high school, and we had also the final exams also for just the final year students, because they were also preparing for the entrance exams at the music academy and academies. Also, they go and try to go all over Europe or the world, and as well as in Belgrade. Also, we were practicing mostly distancing, masks, washing, disinfecting hands at schools, at the entrance of all of the schools. So pretty much the same. I have been following also, as some of my colleagues, Johns Hopkins statistics, and I see that all over the world is not well. Some countries are better, and that's good. But it seems that this virus is here to stay, so we kind of need to learn to live with it, and try to also get our, how can I say, daily routines and our singing routines within the whole new way of life. But what I wanted to say is that I think we as singers, performers, and teachers are kind of used to disinfecting and keeping distance. And like I always told my students, you know, October to April, no kissing, no nothing, because we have to sing. So I guess this is not too strange for us, but we need to be aware. So in any case, unfortunately, we have protests right now, and we're probably going to have an even worse situation. We had plans for September and end of August how to start the new school year, but now I think we're just going to be feeling how everything goes.
Well,
so
thanks,
as everything was said before, so.
Yes, I appreciate it. You know, we just want to give everybody a chance to speak.
Yeah.
And all the best to your mother. I know you're taking her to the doctors, so we wish you all the best. We're going to scoot around as quickly as we can, but I think it's really valuable that we're all saying what is the situation in our own countries, because I think it gives us a sense of connection. So Wilhelmine, I think you're next on my list. Are you there?
I'm here. Hi, everybody. The Dutch outbreak management team has done a lot of research on singing. For 4 months, it was considered to be really very dangerous. And due to an outbreak of one massive John Passion in the Netherlands, where a lot of casualties were noted. But after long research, and I put the link in the chat, and using a lot of the same research, the Kena Hein and the Freiburger document, finally they decided that singing is not much worse and not much more contagious than speaking, coughing, and sneezing. And now, since the 1st of July, singing is allowed to be safe, 1.5 meter distance at the sides and 2 meters in the length of the singing. And that static choirs can sing in scattered how do you say that? Formation, thank you. And for the dynamic choirs, they're looking for ways to work that out with shields and everything. For the singing lessons, the NVZ has kept 2 meters distance during singing, with a lot of course, the ventilation thing. Ellen will tell about how the high schools, the music schools worked out their exams, but because I don't know that, but that's the moment that's where we are standing now. So it's actually not that bad. And that's also because the infection and every contagion in Holland is very low at the moment. And well, we'll see what happens after the vacation, because now the vacation starts, and we'll see what happens in September.
Thank you, thank you. Liva, I'm going to leave you till the end. So if we go to Johan in finance and in Finland.
Good early afternoon, everyone. I'm Juho Eerola, the president of Finance. I work as a theatrical vocal coach and teach on different levels of education, from music schools, private studio, to University of Applied Sciences. At the moment, the situation with COVID-19 in Finland is relatively calm. We have only had 45 new cases during the last 7 days, which leads to the number of 0.6 cases per 100,000 inhabitants. At the moment, the median age for people getting infected is going down, which is a bit alarming. Most cases are in males from 20 to their 29 age group. and it's double the amount compared to women. In Finland, I think the situation is a bit interesting because we go on summer holidays relatively early. So we had the lockdown period and then pretty much all the teaching came to an end. But of course it affected a lot, so everything was kept online. Many of the private teachers lost a lot of students because they were not willing to adapt to the situation, or maybe they had other things to take care of, as you can understand. So at the moment in basic education, I think music schools are going to open pretty much normally, of course, taking care of the safety measures. Universities will be in this kind of a hybrid form. So all the necessary, just the necessary things for people to graduate on time during the fall semester 2020 is held in person, but otherwise everything is online. But private studios, since we don't have any like official recommendations, it's pretty much to their own consideration if they're willing to get back to one-on-one teaching. Of course, following the safety measures. So if the records for the new cases stay low, then we are pretty much in a good position. But if they start rising again, who knows? Then we will probably have all of this that you have mentioned earlier in ahead of us. Okay. So that leaves me quite pensive at the moment.
Thank you. And I'm so sorry that it's changing a little bit, isn't it? This virus, you know, the age range seems to be dropping, certainly in the States. A lot more young people are getting it, which is what will really affect universities. I'm zooming on to Solvi. Solvi in Norway, and there's a big voice symposium in Norway, and Solvi's kindly got herself out of it for a few moments.
Hi everyone, so I hope you hear me now. So I will just, I work both privately and at the university and academy levels. So, and I also conduct choirs, so I've been very interested in everything you have said. So Norway has a very low contamination rate, and has that for a long time, and has a similar situation as Juho talked about, that we went straight from kind of a lockdown into the summer break. The thing is, in Norway that concerns me a little bit for singers is that we have no mask policies at all. So we don't wear masks anywhere because the numbers are so low. So that's been the government's situation. So for me as a teacher, that's a little bit of a concern when we start the fall semester. We also only have 1 meter rule, not 2, as in other countries. So I've been trying to lobby for for a longer distance for singers. So we'll see what happens. And then we have other than that, we have quite strict governmental rules about musical arrangement, and we can only have now, I think it's 200 people together in a place. It used to be 50 people. So we have all these regulations that are in constant change depending on what's going to happen. But I think, as many others have talked about, that most of the regulations are based on musicians more than singers. So that and also we have not that many voice researchers in Norway, and I think that has something to do with it. So that there's no one who's definitely saying this is what's happening. So we have to do this as an organization instead. The choirs opened pretty early, and so there was a quite strange situation, as I could conduct my amateur choirs, but I could not teach in the university at the same time. So there's been a little bit of these things going on. So I hope that there will be more of a little bit more of a distance for singers because we know of these things that you all have talked about, and that we just have to see what happens with how many people are infected during the summer holiday, basically. So yeah, that's our situation.
Thank you, Sylvie. And Martin in Vienna, how are things in Vienna?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Martin Wacker from Austria, and I'm responsible for international affairs of the Austrian Association. And I'm also still vice president of EVTA, not for a long time, but till the end of the year. And next year I will be a chairman of the International Congress of Voice Teachers, which will take place in Vienna. We hope all that the situation will getting better and we can make a normal, I would call it normal Congress. What I would like to tell you is in Austria, I think the politics was in Austria very clear from the beginning on. We had a very early lockdown, and so we had, after this first I would say mistakes in the Tyrol, we had not a huge number of sick people in Austria. Then of course they had to relax the situation again. And so now the number is a little bit growing again, but they now try to have a new strategy with defining regional clusters and to really to know who has relationship with somebody and so to find these special clusters. Also in the university we had, I think, the voice education, especially I'm busy at the University of Music and Performing Arts in Vienna, and I'm also teaching privately. And at the university we had one period with a complete lockdown. And in this period we had to teach online, of course, like everybody. And then they changed to a second period where we could, I would say, about 50% of the lessons in the university, like presence lessons, only in the big rooms, of course, and the other 50% we continue to teach online in that way. And so we always, of course, have to write down who is in this room at which time, because if somebody is sick with corona, then you can find out with whom he had contact, and you can find these clusters, you know, all of that. What I would like to say, only in a very quick way, 3 points. Of course, this is a very challenging situation for all of us, but I would like to point out 3 aspects where I think that this is also a little bit positive. The first thing is that I think also the response of my colleagues and also from myself was that the results of the teaching online in this period was much, much better than we thought before. Before I thought, okay, I will teach online because only to keep the students motivated and to be more like to have a good atmosphere and only in that way. But there was really very clear, I think, progress of the students, where I and also my colleagues were very, very impressed about that. So the second thing is, I think we all were digitalized in this period, because before I did not handle such a lot with these things because it was not necessary, and now we all have much more skills in this like also we have our meeting now, yeah. So I think this is also a positive aspect to enhance the digital skills for all of us. And the third point for me is that also for our teaching, for me especially in my private teaching, of course, the target group of this private teaching now is of course much larger. Because now I teach every week some students from Canada and from Singapore and from Sweden and from wherever, and normally I wouldn't have the chance to do that. So I think, of course, the negative thing is we cannot teach so many lessons normally, physically, but we also, on the other hand, have a bigger target group to teach people online, because we all have the skills now to do that. So I would think these are 3 points I see also a little bit a positive aspect in this, of course, not very, very positive global situation.
Yes, and It's interesting because Norma was reminding me that 10 years ago when EVTA, we did our digital technology conference meetings that were supported by the European Union, and we couldn't find anybody who was willing to do a virtual lesson. And it was actually in Helsinki at a finance meeting, and Norma did a virtual lesson with somebody right on the Arctic Circle. And we all watched for the first time a virtual lesson. And now, of course, 10 years on, we're all getting much better at it. So is it Ayla or Ayla?
It is Ayla from Belgium, from the Belgium Association. I'm the international coordinator. Thank you very much for this great initiative. I will tell something about Belgium and the COVID pandemic. In fact, we went in a limited lockdown. It started from the mid-March, in fact. And we could only go to a pharmacy or doctor or getting some groceries. That was allowed by our government. All social and cultural events were all cancelled. And of course, for businesses, all telepractice was the norm, in fact. We started with only 2 weeks, but then everything got extended. But then in Belgium, our government has an exit plan with different phases. And the first phase started at the 4th of May. But for the singing and the private practices, etc., that's only from mid-May that there were some things getting better and could restart. Before it was all distance learning. From the end of May, we have maybe differences between the educational institutions, and then we have also an organization for choir singers, etc. If we look into the educational institutions, we see from the end of May they could restart, but only one-on-one lessons were possible. And then from the 15th of June, their group lessons were possible again, but only with a maximum of 20 persons. And of course, with all the precautions we should take, like Filipa and different persons already talked about. But now, in this time, of course, in Belgium from July, we have a holiday, so that's all stopped, in fact. When we look into the choir singing, that's only quite recently that they could restart from the 1st of July. That was allowed by our government, of course, under special conditions, like social distancing from 2 meters, 4 square meters per person had to be there, and of course a requirement of mouth masks also. Only when there is a group of youngsters with an age under 12 years, that's different, and they don't have to wear mouth masks, etc. And then the cultural activities, that is allowed now at this moment without an audience until 50 persons, and then with an audience, they ask people to be seated. And then there is a difference between inside or outside. Inside, they can go up to 200 persons, and then outdoor it's to 400 persons, that's allowed. Yeah, I think that's the most important for Belgium. Maybe Lieve can add something. But now we are waiting because Belgium has a lot of phases going on, and then maybe in August there will be a change. And we're waiting for September, how the restart of education, etc. will go.
Thank you, Ayla. And of course, I was going to be in Antwerp at the World Choir Games.
Yes.
Doing the voice clinics with Lieve, and it's all so sad.
I know, it's all cancelled, of course.
So Ellen Pieterse from the NVZ, from the Netherlands.
Yes, hello everybody, good to see you all. My function is I'm president of the NVZ, the Dutch Voice Teachers Association, and you already heard Willemijn explaining a little bit about the general situation in the Netherlands according to what's happening with the singing. I'm also teaching at Artis, so that's the conservatoire in the Netherlands. One of them I teach in Zwolle and in Arnhem. And even though it's the same institution, there are differences in the approach. And I teach music theater students, pop and jazz singers, and classical singers. So I see them all. And our pop and jazz finalists had to do their finals online with an audience of their parents and their best friend. So they could invite 4 people total, and then the jury, and the rest was a live stream, and it was to be seen on Facebook or their own site. So that's the Artis Facebook site. So people really adjusted well also to the distance learning. I agree with Martin that I was surprised by how well they did, because I had to switch from teaching one-to-one at school to online teachings since the 15th of March. So it has been quite an undertaking, I must say, but it has really been going well, and the progress was amazing. So the music theater students, who are most of my students, they are allowed this coming week to do their finals and have an audience of 30 people and the jury. So that is for them really great. And that's only for the finalists, and the other had to all do their exams into the next year online and make a movie. And in Zwolle, where the classical department is, people are allowed to sing for an audience of 30 now. So it's weird, and I think it's also strange to not being able to work face to face with your students. I am allowed now to go back to school and work with one of my final students from Zwolle, the classical department. And we are even allowed 3 singing teachers and 1 student together to work on her final. So measurements are loosening slightly, and we will be having a sort of normal start in September at the conservatoires in the Netherlands, but for the singing lessons they are going to use bigger halls and studios where for sure there is better ventilation. So for Zwolle, for example, there's going to be really something they have to work on, because ventilation system is not really good there, and in Arnhem it is. So it's interesting where it's going. And we've been allowed to teach privately in the Netherlands, so that saved me because my husband is a singer and a singing teacher too. So we had income. That's on a personal note. So that's the situation for the conservatories in the Netherlands.
Thank you. And yes, of course, income is a serious thing. Now, Jean-Charles, it's good to see you. You are now the new president of AFPC, and we have Emmanuel as well from France. So it is really good to have you in our EVTA family. So can you say a little bit about how things are in France?
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes, we do. Okay,
because I have a very, very bad microphone. So I am the AFPC, the French Singing Teachers Association president since 3 years. But it will be the last year for me. And there is with us Emmanuel. Tu veux dire 2 mots ou pas? T'attends? Okay. I'm a classical teacher. And Emmanuel is our vice chairwoman. Today, France is out of confinement, but all the music schools and conservatories keep closed since 4 months. but we are able to organize training courses in July and August. And in the country, the number of 6% is decreasing a lot. So the context in France is quite the same as in other countries. Rules and recommendations are quite the same as those we had this morning in Portugal. I won't go into details because it could be very long, too long, but we use distanciation, protection materials, etc., and so on. But we are in a transition period because the revival of the musical activities is very, very difficult and very long. Teaching the AFPC, the recommendations today for the singing teachers come from the French government. So there are recommendations for reopening libraries, museums, theaters, public halls, and conservatories. So AFPC, so the French Singing Teachers Association, organized a lot of web meetings on distance learning, web teaching, and about the risks of contamination for musicians and singers, and risks of contamination for singing teachers, considering some European or Austrian studies, but studies of the French Phoniatry Society, who works with us to inform all singing teachers of AFPC. Today, teaching action will go back in September, respecting the rules. It will be okay for individual lessons, but very, very difficult with the groups. And we are sure that we have to introduce to work with distance learning from now on. So we are sure that we have to teach with distance learning from September. Emmanuel, tu veux rajouter quelque chose?
Emmanuel, would you like to say something as you are here?
Hi, everybody. I'm very glad to be here and to hear about you all. No, I don't want to say anything. I just wanted to notice that I think we are much close to the German situation, and that in France we are very far from the Italian situation, because I think people are not really concerned about the virus now, that they don't wear masks anymore and everybody seems to need freedom. But every cultural events are still cancelled and still cannot take place. So except that everything is reopened. So well, I just wanted to say that, but I'm really glad to meet you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Agatha, you are from Poland, and we met you in Wrocław, didn't we? You did a wonderful presentation for us about the Polish language, which, you know, when I came back home and I said I've been to Wrocław and someone asked me if I was Polish, I was so impressed. But that was thank you to you.
Congratulations to you then.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to apologize for being late today. I had problems with connection, but hopefully now everything's fine. I can hear you. I can see you very clearly. In Poland, actually, there was a lot of restriction. We had a few weeks lockout, sorry. But right now it's quite similar to France, where we do not wear mask if we don't have to. We have to wear mask in shops, in public spaces. And to be honest, I should have my mask right now, put it on, because I'm in the academy. And we finally are allowed to do classes. However, only with graduates this year, graduates, and with people who play big instruments, for example, organs or double bass. Honestly, the contamination rate is about 300 people per day, so it's quite rough, I guess. However, thankfully, I know just one person that was contaminated once. It's now he's now completely healthy, and that's all what I can say. I'm a little stressed. I'm really sorry.
No, it's lovely to see you, Agata, and thank you so much, because you know Poland is very close to our hearts. So now
Susan, sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make a remark here. The recommendations that we show, the very thorough ones, were not made by the Portuguese government. The Portuguese government were very general. There is no specifications on choir singing and singers. It was the Portuguese Association of Teachers of Singing and Professional Voice Users who gave these recommendations. But from what, and before we close, because I saw that Susan is going to close, I just wanted to say very quickly, because maybe João will not be able to talk about the Portugal situation, because I just presented the ApVoz recommendations. But we got contamination in our choirs as soon as we started to sing together. And the virus is spread in aerosols. So it will happen again if we don't take protective measures when we start again in September. So my suggestion will be two things for the future. One is that everybody could think about recommendations to give in their colleges, in their academies, in their private teaching. They could use their own protective measures without waiting for the government to say do this or do that. And second, I think it is common debated here that we need to go online and distance learning, and we should talk about that as an associations on how to do this in the future in good conditions and with good teaching solutions on distance learning. So this is all. I would say goodbye, but I will stay here, but I will not talk more. Thank you.
Oh no, I'm just aware that we've been very good. But Heidi, would you like to say something about the UK?
Yes, hello everybody. Sorry I was late as well. Yeah, it's slightly confusing in the UK because we have 4 devolved governments all doing different things and giving out different recommendations. So depending on where you live will depend on what you're doing. We've obviously got more cases of coronavirus in England than we have in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. There have been over 44,000 deaths in England, which is an incredible number. But it's obviously going down now, which is a good thing for us. In the UK, the government's been quite slow to respond really to the music industry, but it's gradually starting to come into focus with what it's doing now. We have a 5-stage roadmap, which means that we're currently at stage 2 which allows us to have rehearsals and training with no audience, also allows performances for broadcasts only, again with no audience. But yesterday it was announced that we're moving to stage 3, which allows outdoor events to start happening again. with limited social distancing. We're as far as teaching is concerned, we're hitting our summer break. So schools are now thinking about how they're going to reopen in September. Most of the children are going to be coming back in age group bubbles, which for us causes problems with things like choirs and orchestras, anything like that that we would do that's extracurricular, which is quite a big thing in the UK. So that looks unlikely for quite some time, and that's something that we're all lobbying for at the moment as to how that can happen sort of carefully and socially distanced. But each institution is going to have their own risk assessments and their own way of allowing music to continue. Ventilation and space being the key issues for everybody really. And a lot of institutions are going to be offering still online, which has been quite a big thing for us here in the UK. Private studios, we're suggesting to our members that each member is going to have to risk assess themselves, weigh up their own health and their students' health, and depending on that will depend on what they are doing, whether they're teaching face-to-face or teaching online. So as AOTOS, we're currently putting together a document that advises members. We can't tell members what to do, obviously, because every member is different. So we've been trying to support members through online Zoom meetings, where we've been sharing concerns and ideas. Our Facebook group has been pretty massive, doing a lot of work supporting each other. I'm sure you have that too. We're taking all of our events onto online, so all our council meetings, conferences are all going online, and we're trying to keep in touch with our older members who are not so clued up with this, trying not to forget them, phoning them regularly to keep in touch with them to make sure they're okay. And obviously we were very sad to lose Eurovox, and thank you for your support that you have given to us on that. We're trying to put some of those presentations online, and we'll be sharing those freely through our website so people can just access those when they want to. And obviously, finally, I just wanted to mention Paul Deacon, who is obviously known to many of you, and a lot of us are still obviously very devastated at the death of Paul from COVID-19. So we've been touched individually with this as well as an organisation. So we obviously are taking it very, very seriously.
Yes, and Eurovox was going to be really an amazing congress. And Heidi and Janice and her team had done a fantastic job, and we're so sad that it just didn't happen. And of course, we also grieve for Paul because he was very much part of the EVTA family. I had a lovely card from his wife and his family only a couple of days ago. So just quickly, Liva, could you just summarize for us a little bit about how we as EVTA are going to try and put as much of the research on our web pages so that people can access it? And then I think you've been so patient, and we've only gone over by a few minutes our hour. Okay, thank you, Liv.
There is a lot of studies going on, and especially also on those droplets and aerosols, and especially in Germany, where there are a lot of studies. So we have Freiburg, we have Berlin, we have Munich, and also the different universities do their own studies. Austria as well, Vienna has done a lot of research. We have the Netherlands in Amsterdam, and I know in Holland there are a lot of studies going on, but no published yet. And of course also in the USA. So we tried to gather a lot of studies, and we want to put it on our website so you can have a look at them. And of course we will try to keep them updated. And if in your country you have studies going on or results, please share them with us, and we will put it also on our website so that they always can be looked at and you have the latest information. I think that's all at the moment. Mm-hmm. Perhaps, Susan, to which mail address they should send it?
I think they can send it, the research, to either my email and I can forward it to you. There's myself and Eleanor and Leva are just looking just to make sure that the research is peer reviewed and correct, and we'll put that on our website. We have put together some 10 tips just to sort of help people, very simple. But certainly my experience from listening to the NATS Congress, the COVID webinar, was this aerosol thing is the big worry now, and it seems to be that mask wearing is really advised for singers, but obviously not when you're singing in public performance. But certainly we're gathering as much as we can, and thank you all so much. I'm sorry that it's such a slightly uncomfortable and tiring Zooming, but Johan from Portugal is going to, he's been there, but he said he didn't want to speak, but he's going to make sure that it can be edited and then put out, and we thank Filipa and her colleagues in Portugal, so that we can get this out, and I think it's good, and certainly after the summer we may meet again, certainly for the council, EVTA Council, on the 11th of September, and then maybe if you've got good ideas about what works for you, teaching virtual lessons or any other information, please just pass it to me or to anybody in the team. But thank you all so much, and have a good weekend when it arrives. And I appreciate for many of us it has been quite a challenge, but we will take the positives. We will move on and we will take those positives and do what we can to make things as good as possible. But thank you, and this is where you can all wave and leave the meeting. But it's so good to see you all your lovely faces, and we'll see you in September at our council meeting, I do hope. But thank you all very much, and yes, you may leave the meeting when you feel you wish.
Bye bye everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.